Yeah, Robert, go ahead.
All right. Thanks for having me, Vanessa. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Robert Payne, representing Danaher. If you've never heard of Danaher, I like to, okay, so you all know the BBC, that's the British, broadcasting, but I refer to Danaher as the BBC. It's the Billionaire Biotech Club. Everything biotech and biotech adjacent is what we do as a company. And we have a lovely panel here today, including myself, here to answer some questions about personal branding. So I'll just go ahead and let the panel go ahead and introduce themselves and what you do here at Danaher.
I can start. I'm Nikki Soares. I'm the Global Talent Acquisition Leader, which is a fancy word for recruiting head for Cytiva, which is one of Danaher's companies that's part of the family of companies that Danaher owns. And so I lead a team of about 50 plus people globally. And helping the organization to find great talent to continue to build up our organization, which is about 16,000 employees globally right now.
All right, thank you.
I'm Hera Lewis.
Go ahead, Hera. No.
I'm Hera Lewis. I work on the employer brand side at Danaher Corporation. So I work on the employer brand marketing, so the media channels that we utilize for engaging talent and telling our story and telling associate stories across the world. And I also work on the insights, so pulling out the performance and helping to utilize insights to be able to better reach and engage and connect with talent so that they can join our organization. And I'm based in New York.
I'm Cicely Washington. I work for Cepheid, which is another one of Danaher's operating companies. I joined Cepheid in the marketing organization. So I came in as a global marketing manager and strategic planning, looking at where we'd like to go with a particular portfolio of products, like a lot of the road mapping and making sure our pipeline was strong. And more recently, I've switched into a role that's unique to Danaher. I'm what we call a DBSL, or a Danaher Business Systems Leader. And in this role, I support a business unit within Cepheid, making sure that we're applying the appropriate Danaher tools to the appropriate situations. And I support around 200 people in that role.
Awesome. Thank you, panel. And I work for Beckman Culture Life Sciences, one of our many platforms as well. And I am an advanced biomedical field engineer. And lately I've been working with the different people that we onboard, because we've just been growing so quickly. So covering North and South America, from Canada down to Chile, and everything in between. But yeah, let's hop into some questions. Nikki, we'll go ahead and start with you, but can you tell the people here, what's the importance of having a strong personal brand?
Well, I think the brand is really what you want to be known for. If you are in the room, what are people saying about you? What do they know about you? And, you create that narrative by thinking about, what are the things that really ignite your passions? What do you want to do? How do you see yourself making an impact? How have you already made an impact? And what you put out in your resume, out in social media, the work product that you produce, your interactions with other people, those are all part of your personal brand and how people pick up what you're all about. So you have to make sure that you're tying all of those things together.
All right, thank you very much. Cicely, can you follow up with that and kind of speak to how you created your brand? She's on a lot of our marketing material, so she's out there. I see. I didn't know Cicely until we did this, but I've seen her face in many places. So can you tell us how you go crafting that story and putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I think so. Really, to piggyback off of what Nikki said, the brand is how people recognize you when you're not there necessarily speaking for yourself. It's your reputation in a way. So I think if we think about it in terms of anything and someone's reputation and how things stick, it's around being consistent. Are they hearing the same thing over and over again about you? Or are they hearing like things that don't quite connect? And so then in their mind, it doesn't like solidify or gel. And they don't really have a clear understanding of who you are, or what you're capable of, or what your interests are. So I think one of the key points to really strengthening your brand is being consistent in the message that you try to portray to people and the information that you share with people.
Okay. And Hara, so we heard how to create this brand, how to be consistent with it, but how do you get it out there? So we can be consistent, we can do these things, but how do you make yourself visible to people that you're trying to work with, or organizations that you want to partner with and be a part of?
Yeah, I think it starts with first going back to the points that both Nikki and Cicely made around how do you want to be perceived? So how do you want to show up in the world? What is it about you that's unique and distinctive? And how can you create consistency around that? And as you look at that, you start to align that with your areas of interest, your skills, your talents, and what you want to pursue. And then there are channels that I think you can use to be able to amplify those points. So I think it's really important to be visible where you are interested, but also have some fundamentals like a LinkedIn profile, making sure that your profile is filled out completely. The one good thing about working on your profile through that kind of channel is that they do guide you through it, right? So from your summary bio to your headline to how much or how little information you want to share about your current career journey to your interests, and also recommendations and endorsements, you can start to craft a great profile that becomes visible to an audience that you begin to cultivate. You also, I think a lot of what we're doing now is virtual, but you can be a part of different types of events, either virtual or in person. If you want to start, in terms of an area, I think finding your interest area is always important to start with, because that's how you can become more active, because you have a shared interest with the group. But being a part of events, starting to, if you're interested, writing about your areas, publishing that, starting to participate in events. There's lots of ways to be able to get your voice out there and your message out there and your profile amplified. But the fundamentals would be really making sure that you have that strong profile on your LinkedIn, and utilizing some of your other social media channels, as Cicely said, in a consistent way. So you may want to utilize them differently depending on how personal those channels are for you, or how public those channels are for you. But the consistency of how you show up will also increase your visibility, because it will become the way that you shape your brand image, which should be authentically you, but it should be something that other people can also understand, relate to, and hopefully interact with in a very consistent way.
Robert, I want to add something to that and what Hara was saying is, I think it's really critical that, you connect the dots for people. So, there's neuroscience studies that show that the human brain can only hold 5 to 7 pieces of information in their short-term memory. So, if you've heard of an elevator pitch, that's why your elevator pitch should be no more than about a minute long, and have those 5 to 7 nuggets or pieces of connected information that you want people to walk away with and remember and move into their long-term memory. So that becomes part of your brand story. So if you've got, 5 pieces of information that are kind of all over the place, people aren't going to be able to follow in their brain and easily transfer that into, this is what I know about Hara, and remember that a week later, a month later, a year later. So you've got to connect those dots around what is it that is important to you? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you've done that are the proof points that you can do that, and make those really clear, connect the dots so that it's easy for people to follow.
Exactly. And that's also just to, sorry to jump into that point as well, Nikki, is that the big point that comes out of that too is the authenticity, right? Like that's how you start to define yourself. So when we talk about personal brand, it really is what is authentically you. Who are you, as Nikki mentioned? So starting from that point, before you even go into the channels that you use or the visibility of your profile, it's about what are the characteristics that would describe you, right? And how would you want others to describe you, as Nikki mentioned? And then also, where are your interests? Where are your talents? What are your goals? You start to push all of that out and look at that, and then you start to refine it. And as Nikki said, connect the dots. And as you create that clear line as to who you are, you start to translate that into the channels that you use. But the consistency of it, even through your storytelling, through your commentary, your posts, how you show up, even at in-person situations, all of that is connected to who you are and those qualities and those characteristics and your interests that you define. So those points that you've connected, as Nikki mentioned.
Absolutely. And Cicely, Hara, I heard you say something twice and it really stuck out, being authentically you. Cicely, what does that look like for you? Like, what are these goals, these attributes of yourself that you already know that are in your head? Because I know you have your elevator speech. So what are some of those people can get an example of what they're looking for when it is the time to put together this public image?
Yeah, I think, we talk about like curating what it is. And so I think that, who I am at work may not be who I am with my closest circle of girlfriends or who I am as a mom. But when I go public in a certain area, I focus on those parts of it, right? So I'm not negating the fact that like I may do certain things with my circle of girlfriends, or I may act different with them, or I may not negate the fact that when I'm a mom and I'm speaking to my children, my tone may be different than when I'm at work. So it's not a matter, like when we say being authentic, I don't think it's a matter of like ignoring or negating who you may be in different situations, because I think we all choose to show up differently in different situations. And so the professional Cicely, the Cicely that shows up to work or to a professional engagement, that's where I'm authentically myself in terms of I show up this way consistently in a professional setting. So I think when I think about what's important to me, it also brings back to like, what are my values? So we all have different values, and I don't leave my values at the door when I'm in a professional setting. Those values come with me. And so I think that that's number one, like my values come first. If it's a matter of being transparent, if it's a matter of speaking up, if it's, a matter of taking competencies really important or building credibility, like those are certain things that may be really important to me that aren't necessarily important to someone else. But because what's important to me, I always have that kind of in the back of my mind, and that's always a way in which I present myself. So the language I choose to write an email with, or the way I choose to speak up at a meeting, is going to be who I am as the Cicely, the professional Cicely. And that's what I try to stick to. Like, even if I'm having a bad day or an off day or something like that, it's like, okay, but that's going to be dealt with hopefully beforehand, but if not, like after, and I'm still going to show up as the person I would be on like my best day, or try to show up as the person I would be on my best day. And so I think that that's how I kind of look at it in terms of being authentic, is no matter the situation, Cicely is still showing up as Cicely. I try not to change the way in which I interact with people as much as possible. There's always certain people that push you to kind of act out of your normal ways in those situations, but you try to minimize those occurrences. And so I think that to me, I'm still being very authentic as to who I am, because when I'm interacting with my coworkers or my colleagues, they don't have to guess who's going to show up at this meeting. They know who they're talking to.
I like that.
Yeah, I think authenticity gets, kind of thrown around as the buzz term. And I've been on other panels where the question of code switching has come up. And I think everyone, whether you're a person of color or not, code switches to a certain degree, because there's always a line between the personal and the professional. You're not going to bring all the personal into the workplace. But the core of who I am, shows up to work every day. So, if you look at my LinkedIn profile and my bio, I say I like to build and fix things. That's where I get my passion. Those are the kinds of assignments that I go after, and I think I've proven that I'm good at. I really value collaboration and working with other people and building connections with other people and the networks that I'm able to build across an organization. And so that's how I show up to other people, and kind of the expectation that I have from other people. I take my work really seriously, and the work that our team does very seriously. I don't take myself very seriously, though. And I like to have fun and joke and, around with the team and the people who I'm working with, so that, it is a comfortable environment. So all of that is core to who I am, whether I'm at home, hanging out with my friends, or in the office. And, that's how I feel I bring my authentic self to work, and the type of environment where I feel I can show up as my best self.
All right, thank you. Har, I'm going to go over to you for this question here. So when we got expert talking about our external influences, people that we see in the media, at home, people you grew up around, whoever, where do you gain that influence from? Who are some specific people or social media brands that you follow that you kind of emulate or like to digest when you come up with your brand or the way you present yourself?
So it's a mix. I would say it starts from the personal and then goes out to maybe some people who are maybe more well known, but definitely my mother. I think she does a great. She's a retired physician, and she's been incredibly to me very impactful around making sure that she is always living her values and always pursuing a life of service. And so I learn from her every day, but I really admire the way that she also, as we've talked about, consistently shows up and lives her values. And so I also try to do the same thing. I'm guided by what I believe in, and I also recognize sometimes that the path that one wants to pursue isn't always the path that's necessarily expecting you. And so I try to make sure that I'm prepared and that I'm also showing up as the best version of myself and being that person all the time, because I want to make sure that I'm also living my own truth, but also I try to take certain kinds of thoughtful risks and push myself out of my comfort zone to expand my comfort zone. And so I look at people who also do the same, and I always find that I admire that they do that. And so, Susan Taylor, who was the editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine and now runs a CARES mentoring program, she is an incredible inspiration to me. I love the way that she also shows up in all these different spaces. It's very consistent, and you always learn from her. You always have something that you can take back and apply to yourself. She's definitely lived a life of service. Melody Hobson, LeVar Burton, people who I think have matched their interests and their values with their work are the people that I admire. There's so many, but it's a mix of personal and also some people who maybe are more well-known but that is, I think, the core of it. It's really matching your values and your interests with what you do. And I find that I'm always striving to do that. And I really do admire people who do that and present that across all the different areas that they are in, no matter what it is, whether it's social, in person, anything that they do, their publications, it comes through. So that always inspires me.
Thank you, thank you. Cicely, do you have somebody that you look to or emulate?
That's a really hard question for me because I just in general, ever since like a young child, I've always had a hard time like really identifying with people I've never met. For me, oftentimes it takes this personal connection. But I will say, one of the people that I do admire is Ursula Burns. I've like kind of followed her and studied her and have read her book. And I think the idea is also because she was an engineer by training and by school, and how did she make that transition from going from like a summer intern all the way up to CEO of a Fortune 100 company as a Black woman was something that I like really caught my attention. And so I think kind of like to Hara's point, when I find someone who has similarities or commonalities to myself, it tends to be, those are the people that catch my attention. And those are the people I'm like, oh, how did they navigate this world? Or how have they been able to do what they've done successfully? And are there lessons there that I can learn and apply for myself?
Thank you. I'm gonna switch it up on you, Nikki. Can you answer here, when it comes to those external influences, how do you separate between the people that have the message you like and maybe they don't present it in a very acceptable way, and then the people that are like, oh yeah, they'll sell you, they'll market you anything, they're great, you always see them, but maybe their message doesn't align with you personally. How do you deal with that situation?
I would much rather deal with the person who's straightforward and upfront than, the person, like I get turned off so easily by the salesy, trying to, sell me the Brooklyn Bridge or whatever. It like that does not come across as authentic to me. And like I immediately shut down and you will not see the warm, friendly Nikki if you're trying to, come across as, either know it all or trying to sell me on something. One of my favorite bosses, who is still a very close friend to me, my nickname for her was Miranda, as in Miranda from The Devil Wears Prada, because she had extremely high standards. And I told her, you want everybody who works for you to look like a supermodel and be Harvard educated. And I wasn't mad at that because, she saw her team as a representation of her. She held herself to really high standards and held everybody around her to those same high standards. And she could be pretty blunt. Fortunately, I was only on the receiving end of that a couple of times where she gave me the look and was like, come on. But I appreciated that about her too, because I always knew where I stood and I didn't have to guess about, was I doing it right or not? Or had I, stepped my foot into it or not, because she would tell me straight up. And that's how I learned and I grew. And I think I grew the most professionally under her leadership than any other time in my career until I came here. And so I think just having that connection with someone who was willing to be real and bluntly honest, it was far more valuable to me. And, along my career, rather than, thinking of like a celebrity or, like celebrity business person that I emulate, it's more picking up things that I like or dislike from the different leaders that I've worked with and other people around me. It's like, oh, that seemed to be really effective. I could see myself doing that. I'm going to add that to my toolbox. Or I really hated that. That does not work for me. I'm going to make sure I never do that to the people who I'm working with. And, that's how I feel I've built my toolbox as a leader and kind of refined what my personal brand is.
Awesome. All right. General question to the whole panel. I'm curious about this one. I struggled with this one to the point where I just deleted my my former self off the internet. But when it comes to your personal brand, so it's 2022. Everybody's got an online presence, whether it be their professional, their personal, whether they're selling handbags on the weekends and running a company Monday through Friday. How do you use that personal brand for your CV, your resume, in the professional sense, and then leverage, because you do talent acquisition. We like to see what people do outside of work. It could help you get a job in a lot of cases. So how do you balance those two, the personal, the social media over there, and then your professional, your LinkedIn and all those organizations? How do you keep them both afloat, or even leverage one to help you out in the other space, or vice versa?
So, I don't know if my gray hairs are as visible on the camera right now, but I'd say I'm a little more old school in terms of keeping pretty strict lines between my professional and my personal, online presence. So if we currently work together, we cannot be Facebook friends, period. If one of us leaves, then I'm game for it totally. We can, if we work together, we can be connected on LinkedIn. I don't use Twitter or Instagram that much, so it doesn't matter whether or not you find me there. Like, I'm on there once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Facebook and LinkedIn, there is a really strong, hard, thick line that I keep between the two. But I will say, from my LinkedIn and more professional online presence, there isn't a big difference in terms of how I show up. It's more in terms of what I share. And so, I still bring my authentic self to the postings that I do, the interactions that I have with other people, the encouragement that I give to others as, I'm reacting to the posts that they do. One thing that people may not understand in the algorithms for LinkedIn is that, it's not just about how you've set up your profile that gets you noticed by recruiters. It's also how much you are active on LinkedIn, posting and interacting with other people, that pushes you up to more of the top of the list. If a recruiter is searching on LinkedIn, yes, it's going to look at the skills that are relevant, but if you've got 5 candidates that are equal in the skills that are showing up on their profile, those candidates that are more active on LinkedIn are going to be higher on the list than those who aren't so much.
I hope everybody wrote that down. That's a good tip. That's from a talent acquisition person right there to let me know. Thank you for that, Nikki. What about you, Har? With that same question along the lines of the two platforms. And
I think piggybacking just first off of the point that Nikki just raised about being active on LinkedIn, another component of it too is the storytelling that you do in your profile. So the words that you choose, what they call them keywords, but it's really truly you want to use real language. Don't optimize just for the keywords, but being able to differentiate, call out your skills, call out your perspective, even things that are your hobbies outside of your professional work. It will also help amplify your profile. And to the point too around interacting, commenting, liking, engaging with other people's content as well helps your profile be elevated and amplified as well. So for me, it's been LinkedIn for a long time. I'm like Nikki. I do have on Facebook a mix, but I do tend to keep it pretty separate. It's for me more of a place where, those are my friends around their birthdays, all of those reminders I more use it for. I'm not as active in Facebook, but I do have a mix of friends and professional contacts in both, but LinkedIn is really where I focus in terms of a social media space. I don't post a lot because I also work in this space a lot. So for me, my day job is also a part of using the LinkedIn's, Facebook's, Google's, all these channels to run our campaigns. And so for me, it is part of my day job, my work. But I definitely utilize it for a lot of engagement around other people's content. And also, I have to say, it's been a place where I've also been able to get a lot of opportunities in terms of people referring me for roles or sending me direct messages with opportunities, or people also reaching out and asking questions and asking advice and wanting to learn more about working at Danaher or working in employer brand or working in media marketing. So it's been great for me in terms of being able to also connect with people in that area. And it's been interesting to see how many people directly reach out to just talk about subject matter content, just wanting to understand and connect around skills and connect around the area. And that's been wonderful, but I've also seen that increase over the past 2 years. And I think it's been a really nice thing that people have been actively doing that. Even if I'm not connected to you, that's a good way to start the conversation. So I would say that's really the channel for me, but I can do the mix, but I do understand the line completely.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we're going to hit this. Cecily, you brought this up several times. We're going to go into networking, and we're about halfway. So I want to start pulling in some of these questions from the people in the chat. But yeah, Cecily, can you talk about how networking impacts your professional brand, or how your personal brand affects networking? Yeah.
So when I went back to get my MBA, one of the professors made this comment, and it has just stuck with me ever since. I thought it was like the most valuable gem ever dropped, was every opportunity is a person away. And I took that full-heartedly. So if you think about all the things that have happened in your life, and all the things that you've either like received or been on impacted by, it's someone on the other end of that. And so, when we look for opportunities, we may come across a lot of no's. And if you read personal stories about pretty much any successful entrepreneur, they had thousands of no's before they got that one yes. And so for me, that's the value in networking. It's really like a numbers game, and you never know who may be able to open the door that you're looking to open, or introduce you to the person who can open the door that you're looking to have open for you. So networking is really, really important to me. I will say when I was back in undergrad, so 18, 19 years old, and my mom pushing me off saying, you have this amazing opportunity, go network. I had a really big problem with it. I was like, that's being phony. I'm just talking to people to talk to people. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, if I don't like them or we're not friends, like, I'm not going to try to like create a relationship. As I've matured and grown in my career, and the way that I see how it's actually perceived by a lot of people, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. And for the simple fact that, kind of like to Hara's point, I reach out to people blindly on LinkedIn, people I've never met before. They have a profile that catches my attention for one reason or another. And I have zero guilt in doing that and asking them for like 15 minutes of their time to set up a call, because I reciprocate that. So anyone who's ever reached out to me that I have no connection to on LinkedIn, I don't know them at all, I always make sure to give them at least 15 minutes of my time to talk to them. So I think that's where I've been able to really make myself comfortable with this idea of reaching out to people, getting to know people, looking for things that you may have in common or interests that you may share, and building off of that. And then you may not talk to that person for a long time. I think there was a question in the box about reconnecting with old coworkers. Like, just send them a note. Say, like, you crossed my mind. Like, how are you doing? How are things? If they're still at the company that you left, like, and you're curious, ask them, like, how are things still going at that company? Like, here's my update. I even have reminders set in my phone for certain people to make sure, like, I ping them on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, depending on who they are, to make sure that, they may think of me when an opportunity arises. And also because I'm genuinely interested in how they are and what's going on with them. So I think that there's numbers out there with how many opportunities come through, like, just blindly applying to a job versus going through your network. And if I remember correctly, and those of you in HR can correct me because you probably see this way more than I do, but I think it's like high 60%, right? Or low 70%. So if you think about that and the edge that you're giving yourself in getting an opportunity based off of someone you know, and it doesn't need to be someone you know very well. It can be someone that you worked with at one point and you're like, oh, I think that they would have skills for this. Let me reach out and see if they're interested. Because that's also something I would do if I hear about an open position that I think may be a good fit for somebody. So I think it's a matter of keeping it balanced between how much you're taking from your network and then also how much you're pouring back into your network.
And Cicely, I'll give an example, about network and how important it is, and getting where you want to go. So, Cytiva and Danaher, this is my 9th post MBA employer. This is the only job I got that wasn't from me working through my network to get the job, but I was sought out by a Danaher exec TA recruiter because she saw my profile on LinkedIn and how it resonated for this job. So that's what I'd say, that the criticality of having a network. Although I do like being around other people and building connections, I'm an introvert at heart. And so I dread being in, big networking spaces, like First Fridays and that kind of thing. That's not my scene. I'd much rather connect one-on-one. So, I can build a deeper connection, have, a real conversation and get to know people on a deeper level. And so that's what works for me. But whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, you can still build a network in a way that feels comfortable to you. It's just about kind of taking that first step to, one, understand what is comfortable for you, and two, just reach out, whatever that looks like for you.
Awesome. All right, let's get some of these questions. I saw one that popped in real early. Mary from Toronto said, what if what people know about you or like about you isn't what you want to lead with? Whoever wants to answer, that's a good question.
I think you have an opportunity to control the narrative and flip the narrative back. And it goes back to having a true understanding of who you are and what you want people to know about you, and how you're going to communicate those proof points and get that message out to other people. So you may have one naysayer, but if you've got enough other people around you who are saying what you want them to say about you, that one person can be, negated. But you've got to make sure that you're clear on what your story is and how you can prove that's your story and that people are going to remember that story.
Absolutely.
I would just add to that too, Nikki, like what we brought up before about being consistent and repetitive. So, a lot of times I used to always think it was like someone needed to hear something 3 times before it stuck. More recently, I saw it's actually 14 times, which is like painful to someone like me who likes like, let's do this now and get it done. So I think that that's also one of the ways, if you have someone who looks at you in a way that you don't necessarily want them to, you can't expect one interaction changing that. It's going to be being consistent. And also another tactic that I think is also powerful is, coming at it straight on. So having a conversation with that person, and let's say, they think X of you, and you can say, hey, I know you think X of me, but this is really what I believe Y to be true. And so then when you do something that exemplifies Y in front of them or where they can see it, go back to them and say, oh, did you see how Y turned out? So now you're forcing them to see what you see, or you're at least bringing their awareness to it, because a lot of times these thoughts that we have about people, they seep into our subconscious, and we're not even aware that we're having that thought of them. And so if someone stops you in that thought process and says, wait a second, I want you to challenge that, and I want you to see it from a different perspective, you've now forced that person to stop and work on rewiring their subconscious. But it doesn't happen in one interaction. You got to keep doing it, and you have to be very consistent in the way you do it, because the first time you exemplify X again, now X has been reinforced back in their mind, and you've weakened your stance on them switching to the Y, the belief Y of you. So that's all I would add to that.
Also, I would add a point around that too. I think reaching or raising your hand sometimes to take on opportunities or roles that maybe can show that side of you that maybe people are not seeing yet. So when it comes to, at least in the workplace, sometimes there are projects you can be a part of. There are areas you can take the lead on that maybe you weren't expected to be the person, but you know that this is something that you want to become known for. Take that opportunity to be able to show what you can do. Somebody told me once, it's called stepping out of your comfort zone to expand your comfort zone. And so the more you can do, as Cicely mentioned, to reframe and reshape how that person or how other people see you, the more you will be able to also build confidence in that space. So being able to also take those opportunities to step out and try something new that will enhance the areas that you want to lead with is another great way. And from a personal standpoint, it's actually was one of the ways I was able to get this opportunity that changed my entire life in terms of how I saw the world, but also my opportunities to work in certain areas. I got a chance to actually work in the UK for almost 4 years because I raised my hand to take on a project. I raised my hand after I finished another project that went well. So I had something that I could use to say, hey, I can do this, and I want to try it. I want to do this outside of New York. I want to go to another area and go to another country. But I got that opportunity because I raised my hand after showing I could do a little bit of this area, of this work in this area. And that led to a completely new path for me in terms of my career. I got to live in the UK. I got to work across Europe, and it also helped me transition into an industry that I wanted to move into much quicker than I thought I could. So raise your hand too and show people the things that you want them to see, to be memorable about you, and that also helps you expand your network as well. The more you're stepping outside of what's comfortable.
Yeah. And we got another question from James P. We'll answer this one. What has been the most memorable moment in your career where your personal brand has gained you success? I do video, audio, photography, all that kind of stuff. Always have. And we were traveling around. We were tier 1 status for biomedical engineers. We had to fix that during COVID, so we were still traveling. My VP, they're like, "What's it like, in the airports?" Because they shut down travel for everybody. So I took a video and I just did what I always did in my videos. And he goes, what? He goes, how'd you do that? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, we just got on a plane. It's not. He goes, no, the video part. So cut to like 3 months later, he's like, hey, how much does that stuff cost? I was like, oh, I sent him like some Amazon, like showed him. Now he like bought like everything. He dubbed like everything I had. Like he was like, well, we can't pay you because I have to hire you as a contractor. You already work for us. But what if I buy all this gear and you shoot some stuff for the company? And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. So so I upgraded all of like my filming stuff. Just because he saw, I sent him a video because he was curious of what it looked like in airports and stuff, but traveling during the COVID time. And that was just super memorable for me because it was recent and it got some free stuff that I can use for myself if I need to. But yeah, open up another avenue for work. But to the panel, any situations where your personal brand kind of brought you some good favor in the workplace?
I think, with my boss that I talked about before, Miranda, she constantly put me in new situations. And, if you looked at me on paper, I really didn't have the qualifications for. And I would always ask her, are you sure you want me to do this? and then I do it. And, things would work out for the most part. And then she'd do it again and give me another challenge that, I really didn't have the, education or hardcore work experience for. But I think the reason that she kept doing that was because she saw that I was a quick study, and that I knew how to navigate, and that I would always ask a lot of questions. She used to bring me to meetings that I wasn't invited to because she knew that I would ask the questions that nobody else would. So, it was those kinds of things that she knew about me and my personal brand that led her to say, all right, I think Vicky's ready for this new challenge. And so, I saw, my promotional opportunities accelerate significantly under her, even though, there were others on the team who had far more experience than I did.
Awesome. We're at the 10-minute mark. So I'm going to do a question, and whoever we'll get a quick answer, and we'll go to the next one. This one's from Stella. How do you build self-confidence beside your skills and competencies? So adding the self-confidence into the skills.
I can take that. I can take that one. I think a lot of it has to do with your self-talk. So there's definitely times even when you have the skills and the experience that you're nervous and you're like, am I going to be able to do it? And I think that's totally normal, right? We all question our abilities at times and the confidence. I think two things is, one, your self-talk, and the second part is building that network of people around you who are there to be your cheerleaders and cheer you on and point out to you things that you may want to overlook or have overlooked about what you've done before. The other thing I think also to piggyback on what Nikki said around that confidence, going into something new and something you haven't done before can be very unnerving, but reminding yourself, this isn't the first time you've done this. This isn't the first time that you've done something new or you've done something you haven't done before. And maybe it didn't come out exactly how you imagined or perfect, but it was good enough and it got you there. And you can remind yourself that you have the ability to learn and pivot and figure it out. So I think you don't have to have everything all figured out before you go into a situation, but having that faith in yourself that you will be able to figure it out as it develops is key for me in maintaining my confidence.
Love it. Love it. All right, got one from Eddie here. This is personal branding can be positive things or the negative things about you. How do you maintain the balance between the two, assuming that we cannot attain an always positive reputation? How do you balance the negative and positive perceptions?
Go ahead.
You want to
Hara.
take this one, or so I come off mute?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's where the consistency comes in as well, making sure that you can't control everything, right? If there are negative perceptions about you, it's maybe because of a lot of different circumstances that may have been not necessarily all in your control, but what you can control is how you show up regularly, how you show up in every situation. And as we've been talking about, creating that consistency and that repetition around it is the best way to manage that area. If there's something that is negative that you recognize in yourself that you want to change or that you want to improve, then there's also an opportunity for you, right? As you're thinking about defining yourself, one of the fundamental parts of it is looking at, as we said earlier, what are the characteristics that you would use to describe you, and what are the characteristics that you'd want other people to use to describe you, and how do you bring those areas together? So really looking at those characteristics, looking at your needs, looking at your talents, looking at all of those different areas and starting to create a consistent way of showing up, I think will create that balance and also might even mitigate some of the negative perception.
I would add to
Oh, go
that.
ahead.
Ask yourself, is it even really negative? Like, what's good in one situation may be bad in another, and what's bad in one situation may be good in another, right? So I try not to place labels on things as good and bad. What's good one day may be bad tomorrow, and what's bad today may be great tomorrow. So, and nobody's gonna like everybody, and not everybody is gonna like you. But there's certain people who do appreciate you, right? So I would try to challenge, like, is it even really negative? Or is there a time in which that negative characteristic or brand serves you well? So that's the way I would look at it.
And Nikki, did you have something? Okay, yeah.
I was going to say, I'd also ask myself kind of two questions on, the negative pieces. One, how much impact is it having? Is it just one person saying it? And how much power or influence do they have? And two, even if it is a situation where it's that having an impact, how much do you care? Is it core to who you are? I mean, I was in a situation like that where, there was a perception about me not being, the right, not having the right leadership presence and the right characteristics there. And I realized that it was about me being the square peg trying to fit into a round hole, and that I needed to find a place where I truly could be myself and where who I was valued. And once I did that, my career flourished. So that's why I say, ask yourself the two questions around how much impact is it having on you, and how much is it in alignment with how your values, and do you care?
Awesome. And for me, on the topic of networking, the same VP that bought me the camera equipment, I got in trouble, not in trouble, but reprimanded a little bit by the manager, curious as to, hey, why are you talking to my boss? If you have somebody come talk, I was like, oh, we're just chatting, about a completely different issue. But, building those connections, there's all kinds of things that'll behoove you and that are beneficial to you and everyone around you. But there may be that one person who is offended or finds that as a negative. So someone's perception of what you're doing is their perception of what you're doing. And it's just that, be the right thing. I say, go for it and do what you have to do.
Self-direction. It's critical. I think everyone's saying that, right? Who are you? What are your core values, and how do you start to define very much a self-directed path for your life?
All right, we're under 5 minutes. Can I get that 1 minute elevator speech from each of my panelists that Nikki was talking about earlier? Like, hey, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is how you can find me. Like, can I get that? Does everybody have one of those elevator speech?
So I just had to do this to write a bio.
Let's hear it. I gotta hear it. The people need an example. I gotta hear what it is.
I'll try to do this from memory without having to pull up the document. But basically what I said is that, I'm in a role now where I'm marrying my passion and my purpose. I am a talent acquisition leader who is passionate about bringing great talent to the organization, but it's also critical to me to feel that purpose and being in a purpose-driven organization that's doing something for the greater good. And I've found nowhere better to do that than in the life sciences industry. My path to where I am in talent acquisition today, was kind of circuitous in terms of starting out as a generalist in the aerospace industry, but I'm very curious, and so I have worked in a lot of different industries and different HR functions along the way until I really found my passion here in talent acquisition.
Love it. Love it. I hope everybody took note of that. Quick, concise, and you know all about what she's got going on. Anybody else want to take a try? I know the rest of us.
I'll let the subject matter of branding bring us home. So I'll go next. So for me, I'm passionate about the quality of life and people living as pain-free as possible. And as a part of that as well, it's so important to me that people love what they do every day. Like I grew up with a mom who had the same job her entire career, and literally every day I heard her complain about it. And I made a decision very early on that was not going to be me. So I feel I'm here to help others, especially those in the underrepresented community, be able to find a career that they wake up and they are not dreading on Sunday nights, that they are excited about Monday mornings. And so whatever industry it's in, whatever drives you, if there's any way I can help you reach that and get there, I'm more than happy to do so.
All right, I want to go work with you, Cicely. All right. Are you ready? Are you ready, Hara?
Be really quick. I love connecting people's stories, and I love connecting people to opportunities. And I've always believed that media channels are the way to do it because they can amplify people's stories. I love all kinds of media. I love everything in that space because of the ability to hear people's stories and learn about people and share their stories and have them be a beacon for others. So my whole goal in life is to connect people to opportunity and to tell their story in ways that give them more access and give others more access to being able to pursue their dreams.
Awesome. 3 brilliant examples from 3 great women. Thank y'all so much. And back to you, Vanessa. Thank you for the time. Thank you for having Danaher here to represent.